Now, the next thing is administration suggested Dewey Engineering. Is it okay to put that on the agenda for the next board meeting? That's what you want to do, right?
You know, realizing that by the time, you know, it'll say that subject to contract review by solicitor administration, that process alone takes, you know, it could be up to 30 days or more. So knowing that if the board gives us the approval on May 14th, we probably won't get a contract done until June.
That would be conditional approval in case the solicitor bombs it.
That's correct, and depending on what this ad hoc committee would come up with, if there is a increase in the scope of the project, then obviously we would have to negotiate that, those extra duties with Dewey.
So we can put on the agenda for the next board meeting as conditional approval pending suggestion by the solicitor. Okay? Yes.
John?
Yes.
What is the time frame as far as the 60-90% review on bid docs
Well,
right now?
I was just gonna ask Mark for that. At what point are the construction drawings now, in your opinion, and are we at the 60%, beyond the 60%?
We're getting close to the 60%. I would say within.
So it's appropriate that on the next
It is,
board will allow them to step in at 60% or shortly thereafter.
I think that we will authorize them when they get their agreement worked out with the solicitor, we'll be ready with the 60%.
Okay. Next item is Plancon D&E approval schedule. Who's handling that?
Well, that would be EI Associates also. As I understand it, Plancon D is the completion of the 30 days after the Act 34 hearing. We did get another comment in today, so I think we're up to a total of 4 comments, written comments from the Act 34. We do have the transcript that was recorded that evening, and Plancon D, once approved by the school board, would then authorize us to submit that to PDE. Am I right with that, Mark?
That's correct. And the Plancon D forms were the forms that were in the Act 34 booklet. So you have already seen them when they were authorized to be used as part of the hearing. So there was no new information except for the transcript and the comments from the hearing. And you're just authorizing that to be officially submitted to the Department of Education.
Our suggestion would also would be to also have the approval of Plancon D and the submission approval on May 14th.
What about the hearing of D&E?
Well, Mark, you want to address E?
Yeah, Plancon E is the design development documents, and that's the layouts that we did with the high school, different departments and the staff. We looked at all the room equipment and layouts that go in the project. It also includes scope of the systems, and I think one of the things that we haven't completed as far as E is concerned yet, there's one thing that we haven't completed, and that's the mechanical system that was in the building. And we've been waiting on that until we hear about the grant for that. So other than that, the development documents are complete to be submitted to the Department of Education.
Do they both have to be submitted together?
They typically go in together, D&E, but they don't have to. You can approve D and then come back later and approve E.
And once you submit them, what is the expectation for what they do with them? Do they say, oh, this is great, move forward? Or do they say, oh, we don't like this, you need to fix this?
When you submit the Act 34 requirements, which is Plancon D, they will go through the transcript and the booklets and the comments, and they look at it mainly for whether it's complete and all the information is submitted. Okay, that's what they look at. And then with Plancon E, we're required to have a review with the department to go over the drawings, and that typically has become a telephonic review where they stay in the department and we get on the phone and they'll go through the drawings and the forms and talk about the different systems and layout of the building. And they're mainly looking for, in their review, mainly looking for the completeness of filling out the state forms, not so much as to comment on the educational or the design merit of the documents. They're more looking at whether you've completed the forms that are required by the state.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Tom?
And would there be benefit to having the construction management company in to review this before we submit? Any benefit to us?
There's really no benefit to that.
Any questions, comments?
I just want to
Yes.
know, was that something that was included in their scope of work? Is that something they would do, or they get involved after?
We get involved, yes.
Okay.
Really, when the construction documents are being developed, that's when we had planned to bring the construction manager in. Just to review before the bids, documents hit the streets, and then when the bids come back, they would help us to go through them, plus be here as the construction starts.
Yes.
I just want to be clear, so Plancon D said, by us approving that, that authorizes you to submit those Act 34 materials. What does Plancon D, what are we authorizing exactly?
When you submit that, you're submitting it's the second design phase of the project. We did a schematic design, which was just a single line drawing.
Mhm.
This Plancon E is called design development, and that sets more defined scope of the project. It talks about systems that go in the building. It also looks at the layout of all the rooms and the equipment that goes in each of the rooms, and then provides outline, it's called an outline specification that indicates what the lighting systems will be in the building, the heating, the cooling. So it gives a more defined scope of the project, and then that really sets the parameters of the beginning of the construction documents and how the construction documents would proceed.
And what's F? What's the next step?
Plancon F is the construction documents. So when you submit Plancon F to review, then they're the actual bid documents, the set of drawings and specs that go out to the bidders.
Okay, thank you.
And that's the one you want the CM to do a constructability review and look for any recommendations on that, because that's where you would get into the actual bid documents.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes.
When will you be submitting, would you be wanting to submit that? I'm just curious as to when.
I think F was scheduled around October, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
But E is, we're looking at the end of May, beginning of June. Correct?
Yes, we're ready to submit E at this point, except for the mechanical systems. Now, as far as the submission to the state, it doesn't mean that it's going to change. If we submit that with one system, then we would change mechanical systems. As we move into construction documents, it doesn't mean we have to go back and submit it, because they're not really approving one system over the other. We're submitting the document. So if we submit it, and the way it is set up now, and then we would change it because of receiving grants or other things, we would just modify it in construction documents. It doesn't require a resubmittal.
But the approval of Plancon E is also basically the board officially closing out the design development phase, and for EI Associates portion, entering into the construction development phase. So if you look at EI's billing, you know, they basically bill 30% in schematic, 30% in design development, and, you know, the balance is construction documents until the end of the project. And this would, you know, basically close out the first 60% of EI's contract and enter into the last 40%.
Any other questions? I have one. E is not ready except for the mechanical. What's the advantage of submitting it now, and how late can we wait in submitting that as board approval?
We can, I mean, it's typically done, D&E typically go in together, but we can wait. I think one of the things we were waiting on was to goes on the mechanical systems, whether we go geothermal or some other type of system, and that's based on any grant money for a lead project. So we can wait to hear about that. But I think.
How long?
Well, but I think by the time you get, your board meeting is when?
The 14th and then the 28th.
Yeah, and so tomorrow is when we'll hear about the grant. So we would know before your board meeting, if you put it on your agenda, we would know that when we submit it.
You would be able to present both D&E complete then?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
One
Yes.
more. So the decision on the heating and cooling is partly on if we get the grant funding, but I would think there's other factors.
There's clearly other factors, but the grant that we applied for was for alternative energy. And what we applied for was to use that towards a geothermal heating and cooling system. We did test borings. We found out that the conditions at the high school site are favorable for a geothermal system. So if we were successful in receiving the $2 million in grant money, that would offset some of the additional upfront costs for the geothermal system, and it would clearly make your payback on that very short, if not almost immediate, on the geothermal system, so you would save energy on the system. We're still working with Paul as to how we would actually design that system, but we're waiting to see if the grant was successful.
Okay. Yes, good.
So the grant only covers alternative energy?
It was for clean and alternative energy.
So it's only for the geothermal system?
You can use it for wind. You can use it for other sources of energy. If you recall, we required to also have a LEED Gold project, and part of achieving the LEED is to show an energy efficient building.
Okay, well, not to bring up a fly in the ointment, but I thought that at some point in time that we weren't looking at geothermal. I don't know.
I don't remember that. This,
Yeah, I think to that point, there was a meeting, as I recall, where we looked at the two, actually, I think there were three.
We had several options.
Several options. The thinking at the time was to hold off on the geothermal because it took up space in every classroom, correct? And there were more. But then I think it was reviewed back and said, hey, we don't want to just toss this out, and we should consider it. So yes, there was a point where we were leaning away from geothermal. But then, as I recall, we said,
And we looked at a more central system.
central,
Right.
right?
So he stepped out, okay. So we looked at several different options, and we sort of put that on hold, and we said, let's submit for the grant
Right.
based on geothermal. Let's see how successful we are and how much money we got through the grant. And when we get that, we would revisit the HVAC systems, the mechanical systems in the project, and we come back to the board and present an energy analysis and everything again, based on how successful we are in.
Oh, we're still putting them in the closet.
achieving the grant. I think we came up with several different ways rather than having closets in each classroom, and I don't think we fully reviewed this or made decisions because we just said, well, let's see what happens with the grant money, because it makes a big difference in the analysis of the system and, based on that. So that's really where we're at, and that's really the only thing that's not completed in the design development phase. But I think by the time, if you put it on your agenda, by the time you get to the board meeting, we would have to make a decision to submit the project. This goes on your agenda, and the board meeting is what date?
14.
So, but even if you put it on your Plancon D as geothermal, you're saying you can still change those plans afterwards?
Right now, with the limited number of people in the facilities department at the Department of Education, they don't really do a really detailed review of the project. Just so you know, I mean, they basically look to make sure that you submitted the forms that are required, and that's really what you're getting from the Department of Education at this point.
well, I apologize, but I don't remember talking about geothermal. What I remember was that hall was concerned about all the units in the individual rooms versus, and I could pretty thought about that.
In all the buildings.
Yeah. Well, that I remember that, but I didn't see that was a problem. The units in the room I saw as a problem.
There has
So-
been no decision made on that at this point, just so we're all clear.
Okay, show of hands for the, putting this on the board, on the agenda. Okay, ayes have it. It'll be on the agenda then, okay? Now, public comment period number 2. Linda Curry, the feasibility study and project she wants to talk about.
Okay, earlier in the meeting, there was mention about different studies that were done, and there was also another one done, I think it was done around, I want to say year 2005 or 6. It was done by MEA, so that wasn't mentioned tonight, so I wanted to bring that up. The other, I guess it's a question I have, which I know you may not answer. I thought I heard when you were discussing the construction management companies that Du Bois' cost was $974,000. But yet at a meeting way back when they were giving presentations, I see their total proposed cost here is $683,251. And I was wondering why the big jump in cost for that group. So, that's it.
Can you read the link?
It was given out at a facilities meeting.
Well, I think I explained that in the newsletter, is that Fidavia had quoted in their price 2 people on the job for 23 months, and Dewey had only quoted 1 person for 20 months. So to compare the same service, we asked Dewey to come up with a new price, and that's what it was.
Okay, because I do have notes here that say that they would have 1 full-time person, but they would have a total of 4, but they would not all be full-time. And that was in the notes I took for that meeting. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from any of the board members? I have a couple of comments that I'd like to talk about. You know, I've been talking about utilization of the classrooms in the high school. And this thing I got in the mail over the weekend is kind of confusing to me. I think I understand it, but I want to be sure. What we're saying there is when we're talking about 77%, 66%, for example, utilization, that means out of a 9-period day, there are 2 periods that are not, there's no students in that room, and not used for class purposes. Is that right? Is that my interpretation, or is that wrong?
If you take a look at that first line item, room 100, where it says 30 classes per cycle and then 6 tutoring classes per cycle for a total of 36.
What was that,
That's-
six what? 6 tutoring classes?
6 tutoring periods per 6
And you put them in the full classroom?
Sure.
For ceramics, we have tutoring.
Okay, so that's why utilization was so bad.
Room constantly,
Okay.
it's not being used for teaching.
Okay, so that's, I didn't understand that part of it.
So that's where you get the 36 out of the 52.
Yeah, but don't we have substandard classrooms that we could use for that kind of tutoring?
Well, there are substandard classrooms also.
Yeah, I know, a whole bunch of them, but are they used?
Well, that was broken out into a separate, the substandard classrooms were,
You have 207, 208, 305, 308, 309.
there
Well,
were 15
substandard.
of them considered substandard.
But couldn't they be used for tutoring instead of the full 25-person room?
Well, some of them are.
Okay, could we use more of them that way? Because having idle spaces.
Substandard rooms, most of them are at 100%.
What?
Well,
Oh,
most
substandard.
of the substandards are at 100%.
Okay, maybe we should be
And they're mostly
designing more
special.
substandard rooms in the new
They're
building.
mostly special education.
Yeah, you know, maybe we should be designing smaller rooms in the new building, so that we can move tutoring out of the classroom and leave it for the typical classes. Okay, that was one concern, because I said utilization has been a concern of mine for a long time, and as I was looking at it now, looks like we probably could cut back by 25 classrooms and still have enough for our students.
Well, we have increased our utilization, since I believe this last one was done, simply because of our tutoring and support structure that we have in place. We're utilizing more rooms now, and as we move to a flex schedule next year, we'll utilize the rooms even more.
It was obvious in this presentation last time that we had 200 and some feet per student, and now it's 170. What was that number? So that's an improvement as far as I'm concerned. And I'm looking, I was wondering if there's any more room for that. So that's the comment I have on that. The other thing came up in discussions over the last couple of weeks was this academy structure. And I have two questions, I guess. Does the academy structure affect the design of the classroom? Are the classrooms the same whether you're academy or traditional?
Pretty much the same.
Pretty much the same. What kind of changes will we have to make to go from academy to traditional?
If you were to change back,
What?
if you were to change,
Yeah, what kind of changes will we have to make in the building?
most of the difference in the academy is mainly, if I want to use the term, the geography of the design, where the actual rooms are located. It's not really changing the rooms or requiring any more rooms or any more space. It's just that you're taking certain subjects and you're organizing them together to form, let's say, the STEM Academy. So you're putting the science, technology, engineering, and math in a group together in order to form that academy. So you're creating, I think in a way, and Dr. Cooper, I don't, but you're creating sort of schools within a school based on the academy program in each area. So you're taking a larger school, you're breaking it into smaller schools, so the students don't have to travel as far based on where their major would be, based on their academy.
Okay.
But it isn't changing I think we changed the design to make them more up to date and to address the current education, but it would be the same regardless of the type of delivery model.
The reason for my question is, in East we had the open classrooms, and the last job down there, we changed that because open classrooms didn't work. But it took a lot of design work to do the job. I don't see it will take the design work to change from academy to standard. Much change work. Does that agree with me in that?
I think one example is a traditional high school that I've worked on for 20 years. All of the science rooms were in one area, were in the science department. And I think in the academy model, you're changing that a little bit, where the science rooms get distributed. Some of them are in the STEM Academy, and some are distributed in other areas to support those different areas of teaching, rather than just lumping all the science in one area and all the English in another area and all the math in another area, and the students go all around the building to get to that department of teachers. In this design, with the academy model, you're creating these like smaller school environments where they can get those subjects within their academy. I think that's a way to describe this. Now, we've done a lot more in the planning than just that, but
we wouldn't have to move the chemistry just
No.
because we went to traditional.
Yeah, but your children would
What?
have such a long walk. John.
What? No,
Your
I
children would
know,
have such a long-
I know that.
you could, I think you could.
Okay, but I mean, what I was looking for is, will we have a lot of expense? Because there's still some work to be done on academies, as Joe said that they aren't extremely successful in New York. That's only one spot, but we have to look at other spots and see what kind of success the academies will have.
John,
Yes.
I have a question, because this is the first time I heard this. I mean, were these academies successful at this school that was visited? Because I'm sitting here like, I hadn't heard this. I mean, I thought the academies, and I know it's facilities, but I think we need to, I thought it was a success there. And I was concerned because it was only one, plus we have 4 academies. But, I mean, if it can't be answered here, and answered Tuesday at the board meeting or sometime, answer that question.
I think we need more, since it's not a real problem to redesign the building if we don't use the academy, I think we have time to investigate other places. And when you talk about success, it's a success on all monitoring, that kind, or is it success in student achievement?
No, I heard.
And Joe
student
was talking
achievement.
about student achievement.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
student achievement.
Well, the report that was made here at the curriculum committee.
Okay, because I wasn't at.
Right, was made by teachers, primarily by Dr. Cooper and a couple of teachers, and they couldn't track academic achievement increases that were dramatic, or they were somewhat not dramatic. But the main improvement was in student motivation, excitement, and
Being able to make connections with their learning, and the increase in the number of students that were having those externship opportunities or internship opportunities.
Okay, yes, Joe.
The program was successful in the sense that the students and the teachers were more involved with the community and more involved with career pathways and more involved with the actual small school feel of the various academies. There were 5, 4 plus 9. So 9th grade academy plus 4. But they couldn't track any direct student achievement increases to the implementation of the academies, which was how many years? 5 years. So in that case, there wasn't. But at Albany, New York, there was dramatic increase in student achievement. Albany, New York is a different kind of setting than either Central New York or Boyer. But there was, in that school district, dramatic achievement, student achievement increases. So it's a question. I don't think it's correct to say that there was no change in what the students were experiencing in the school district compared to a traditional school when they went to the academies at Central New York.
Okay,
At least that's what I heard.
Yeah, because when I heard that, then I'm like, wait a minute, is this like mastery learning? Because we had mastery learning some time ago, and that was like, it was like that was the end all, the be all to end all. It was like that was going to help everybody and the students' progress. Everything was going to go great, and then that came down fast. And so that's why when I heard that, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I mean, I know we can put 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th in this building, but I also know that you know, there's been a lot of push on the academies, that that's the way to do it, because if you did 9th, 10th, you might do like 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, which you could still do, I guess, if you had to. I mean, I bought into the academies at first because I thought, you know, part of it was going to be.
Let me just say, this district's been talking about academies since I was here, talking about particularly visual performing arts academy. That's something that was talked about before I was here, because that is a special for the Boyertown Area School. That's one thing that this design will really enhance, as well as the STEM academy. And STEM is everywhere now.
Right.
There's a lot of money for STEM. The foundation is talking about STEM. We're doing research on STEM. There's money everywhere, it seems, to fund instructional materials and the things that Boeing Corporation, Exelon Corporation, Verizon Corporation, I mean, they're all interested in STEM because it's science, technology, engineering, and math. And so those are the two academies that are identified in the comprehensive plan that the board approved in November. So, I mean, the whole thing fits with that, and it does create a smaller school. That's what, well, for example, that we tried to do in Sourdough, but not by using academies. We grouped the classes together to create a smaller school field. But we didn't, the sciences together, but the different subjects, the English and the world language, social studies, and math, are all with those small schools.
Like ninth, 10th, 11th.
Ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th.
You put the two grades like that.
But they all come together for
Okay.
the
Well, like I
arts.
said, when I heard that, I was like, whoa, wait a minute.
It's,
Now it's-
If I'm not mistaken, there's been,
wait a minute.
sorry,
Oh,
I didn't see your hand.
I called Gwen.
Well, you had called Joe a while back.
Go ahead.
No, he called you out back, you go right, I can remember, I know I can remember this.
Now, listen, at the meeting I was at, we were told by the administration that the test scores, there was no improvement in York when they went to the academy instructor. Is that right, Melissa?
Not on the PSSA, but they did mention, I do have notes here from Central York, that they said the SAT scores had increased. But right now, we're dealing with apples and oranges because we're looking at PSSAs and we're looking at keystones. So right now, we have to learn over the course of time whether or not their keystones will improve.
And aren't our test scores better here in Boyertown than York?
They are at this point in time.
Okay, and the other thing I wanted to ask you about was the STEM academies, they will probably be the most popular, have the most demand, I would think, for them.
Not
You just said-
necessarily.
You just said how important they are. So how are you dividing up these academies? When you have 4 different academies, what if 50% of the students want to go into STEM? What happens?
I believe there's room in the school to include them in the, those advanced
You have
science.
division from 50% that go into STEM.
I don't think in the room, in the particular section of the school.
It has flexibility, the rooms have flexibility to move one way or the other, just how the building's designed.
But I'm saying, if a student wanted to get in STEM, you didn't have room in that group for him. You have to go in another group, correct? So you couldn't get in STEM.
The students will choose an academy selection upon their entrance in the 9th grade. They're not locked into that. And this is based on what we've learned in our visitation is that those academies, kids move in and out of academies, and in the particular school we visited, they were required to lock in by their 11th grade year. And they had quite a bit of movement. What they found was their distribution of students within the academy was pretty equal. It worked itself out to be pretty equal number-wise with
Four.
interest. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Gwen.
I was just gonna make the statement that, you're talking about one school and improvements in one school, but the research that I read about schools that have the STEM academy indicate that test scores for the students involved in that have increased. Am I wrong in that? I mean, I thought that I read that.
I think it somewhat would depend on how the STEM Academy is functioning. We visited Downingtown School District. That's a magnet school. They have to apply to get into that. There are 800
So
students.
then
can
theirs,
get-
of course, would be
And they have-
higher, so their test scores would
They
be up.
have 2,000 student high schools plus an 800 student STEM academy. And that's a magnet school only, so students have to apply. So I would, it depends on how it's being, we're going to permit students to choose the STEM academy.
Yes.
On the utilization, I know this is the facilities, but I had called Wayne because I didn't understand it, and I was wanting to know where the number of students are. I had asked for the number of students per class,
Mm-hmm.
and if somebody will explain this, there's no table with it, or I don't understand where everything is, because I don't see any number of students.
mean in the classes?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the only way you get a true utilization, because, I mean, here's one that has 2 classes per cycle. Yet it's 72% full, I guess. I need to know how many students are in. That's what we had asked for originally when I asked for this. I got the 5 votes. Does anybody know what this is, or where the students are, or? I don't know who did this, it was in my packet.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I think,
We know there's a need there, but
I think what I guess I talked a little bit with Brett, and it's like 80% is what you're shooting for. It's pretty much
80% of what?
80% of the usage of the classroom.
I want to know how many students are in each classroom.
Uh,
That's what I had asked for. I mean, that should be pretty simple.
Okay, I was just, when I said yes to that, I was just looking at what percentage was being used. I wasn't thinking, because some classes could have 12, some 10, some 20,
Some shouldn't have, we have a number, a bottom number. Yeah.
You have special education, and you have lots of different kinds of classes.
all right? Yes, Steve.
Well, just to comment back on the academies, I think the one thing all of us could agree on at the tables here is there are numerous measures that we could utilize in the field of education. So certainly student achievement, PSSAs would be a primary measure. But going back to these academies, there's got to be some early reads on dropout rates, truancy, behavior problems, things like that. So if the students truly feel more connected, for example, which was some of the great comments coming out of the visit, I would certainly think that truancy would be improved. Number of students attending a 2 or 4 year college would probably be another measure. And I'm sure there's people at this table.
Graduation rates?
Thank you very much. Smarter than me that can come up with many other measures. So I just think that, you know, maybe some more digging on that, and even if it's an early read, so if it's only been a couple years, the early read could at least give us something. And I would hope that that early read would show that, worst case, there was no change. Perfect case, you know, the measures have gotten better. So I just want to throw that back out there, because I do think with some more due diligence, we could probably come up with some of these indicators from other schools that have academies.
Okay, I am of the opinion right now that we need more information on academies, although I don't think it ought to stop the progress of the design of the school, because academy versus classroom isn't a change, a basic change. So I don't want to use that academy approach to slow down the instruction of the school. The next item I had was the old building use, but I think I was ready to put that aside, because we're forming a committee that will do something with it. But I do know that sitting vacant is not an option. We've done that 10 years ago or 12 years ago, and we have to do something with it. So it's up to that committee. We'll have to do something with that. And then the last item I have is we talked about is student enrollment. And I think what we've done now is we can't separate the high school versus the other schools. We say other schools are overloaded, but the project we're looking at right now is intended to unload those schools temporarily. We may still have to do more work down the road, but this is a first step, in my opinion, to unload all elementary schools of the 6th grade and let them function again for a year or two while we have more time to decide where we have to do something about those. So those are the comments I had done for this meeting. Any other comments?
John?
Yes.
I just have one other question, and that is, with Gilbertsville's enrollment where it is, and approaching possibly 800, depending on how many leave in 6th grade and how many enter in, is there any way to stop an because over here, you've got Washington, it's down, and, I mean, you're almost at the point where I don't know that your the interior facilities of your cafeteria, your gym, and all of those, the use of those can handle it.
Yeah. Three of the classes in Gilbertsville, in this last report, are over 25 capacity. The first kindergarten and the first 3 grades are under capacity, but fourth, fifth, and sixth grade are over capacity at the present time, based on this report here.
Yeah, I just wondered if the administration if there's anything that needs to be looked at now for the coming year with those numbers.
If the gray areas are moved where they should be,
No, well, I'm not saying anything, I don't know.
no, but I mean, are they being moved the way they should be? Is that,
Well, I'm assuming that they are.
The gray
All
areas
right.
are an approved plan, they're not moved each year by us.
No, I-
They're established, and then the children
We
who
vote
live
on
in
it, yeah.
them are assigned each year with the principals. I know Dr. Christman knows that well, because we work together on it. We'll be meeting this week to review some of this year's children, and certainly within the confines of the approved plan, we certainly do everything we can to assign the children where they can be best served. We'll continue to do that.
So getting back to what I'm talking about here is, yeah, we're gonna move 600 students in the high school just like that. But we're not gonna replace them at 7 elementary schools just like that. It's gonna be over a 10-year period, that growth is gonna occur. So, we've talked about that, but I mentioned it right now, so I don't wanna confuse it with the need for the work that we're doing at the high school. Yes.
Speaking about the transportation comes to mind here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I had asked at the last meeting or the meeting before about as far as getting an actual number of students from Mr. Messinger that by their address would go to Gilbertsville, by their address would go to New Hanover. So in other words, we didn't use gray areas, we didn't use redistricting, what the actual students would be going to the schools in all the elementary schools in our district. So that way we actually see the physical population that sits in Berks and Montgomery counties.
Without the design, Barbara, what are you saying Gilbertsville, going to Gilbertsville? You have to have a Gilbertsville address, postal address? You mean they should go to Gilbertsville?
No, I would think if you took away the gray areas, you took away redistricting, and you went back to where it was then, most students would be
Oh, okay.
going to that
You
elementary
pick
school.
the period in time then, okay.
Yes.
All right.
You wouldn't do gray areas, you wouldn't have redistricting, it's like right down. How many students would be going to Gilbertsville? How many would be going to New Hanover? How many would be going to Washington? Boyertown, all of those schools, what would be the actual population for each of those schools? Because that
So
would.
you're talking like, at one point someone had said, was it 60% of the kids weren't originally from Boyertown?
Well, figuring out a county line is pretty easy, but I think what Mrs. Harper is describing would take a little bit of work on our part. I think we'd have to talk about that.
And we have to
Moving the
So it'd be
redistricting lines back 6 years or 5 years, and then trying to ascertain where children are now in relationship to those lines and where they go to school would be pretty tricky. I mean, we're certainly willing to work at looking at reports that the board wants us to do, but I think we would need to think about that one a little bit.
So you're saying county lines are easier?
Yeah, because, we have demographics, we can, kind of sort by county, and, I could give you a number of kids, Montgomery County or Berks County that go to different schools, I could break that out without
But
a,
I live in Montgomery County, my kids went to Boyertown. It's in Berks
what I'm
County.
saying is I could take Boyertown, what I'm saying is I could take Boyertown and I could tell you how many kids pretty easily live in Montgomery County that go there versus how many kids who live in Berks without a tremendous amount of work.
Okay,
What I'm
so-
saying is, it's a little bit more difficult for us to go back 5 or 6 years to old redistricting lines try to figure out where those children would go now, once the lines were moved, because redistricting moves the lines.
Steve?
Well, I recall quite vividly what Barbara was saying, and this is, as I recall also, was actually a while ago. And I took it, because I thought it was a great idea, and the way I took it was not necessarily going back in time. I took it that if we were to look at the district totally new today, forget county lines, because we're one district. So that it's not so much about that, but it's about, here's the school, quote unquote, my child's neighborhood school. So if I were to draw and survey this area today, so pick a school, it could be Pine Forge, it could be New Hanover, Upper Frederick. These would be the children, this would be their neighborhood school, where we're not busing them past their neighborhood school to go to another school. And I took that as the intent was to see exactly where we would lay it out today. So in other words, if we were starting the school district today in 2013, and when suddenly we built 10 schools, and here's where the children are going to go, what would be the true impact to each of the buildings? Because right now, the gray areas are useful so that we can manage the district properly. But we may find out that there's other numbers out there that we're just oblivious to, I guess is the way I saw that. I don't know if that made sense or caused confusion.
I'm not sure I see the value of your request, and especially if it took a lot to put them together. But I was just gonna offer that maybe that TransFinder software has some good information in it.
That what?
The TransFinder software.
That's why I felt that Mr. Misc would do that
Yeah.
easily by TransFinder.
Joe?
I wonder, when we go, if we go to this and we move sixth grade out of the elementary schools, what do you think the population of Earl and Pine Forge will be? Well,
Be about 45 less than what they are now.
So it would be 242.50 at Pine Forge and
About 275.
275 at Earl.
Take away 1/6 of that population.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Donna, your comment about what will we gain by this information, I think we have to investigate the value of that. It takes a lot of time. What are we gonna do when we get it? What are we gonna do with it?
What is it for?
Yeah.
It's basically to show the growth of students on the Montgomery County side and the need for the next phase of the project for an elementary
Okay,
school.
for the next phase you're talking about. Okay,
Correct.
all right. So it's not gonna stop this phase or change
No.
this one? Okay.
Okay.
I'm willing to get into this one first.
Well, they gotta keep moving along.
I know, I know. Okay. Time for the announcement. May 14th, 7 o'clock, the board meeting. We have several items going to be on the agenda there based on our meeting today. So we ask you all to be there and bring your proxies. And May 21st, 5:30 p.m., we have facilities meeting at the Education Center here. That's going to be interesting also. Anything else for the good of the meeting?
I believe there's a 5:30 policy meeting on May 14th. It's not down there, so there's a policy meeting.
May 14th policy meeting at
5:30.
5:30.
Richard Durr.
Okay, anything else coming before the board?
No, just move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Any second, no seconds?
Let's get along.